Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Transforming Agency Security Operations with Artificial Intelligence. Can't wait to do this webinar. It's going to be a lot of fun. My name is Tom Suter. I am the CEO of the Advanced Technology Academic Research Center, and I have the pleasure of moderating today's panel. I'd like to thank all the attendees for joining us in your busy days. Also, special thanks to Shelley Scarpelli and Saeed Masood and the rest of the Fortinet team. They've been a great partner of ATARC. I'm just kind of thinking back on pandemic. I think they were our first webinar when we transitioned from over to the virtual world. So they've always been good friends of ours, and we've known them all for a long time. So this afternoon, you can expect to hear from the panelists, which will be followed by a Q&A. Please enter in your questions at that time. I try to get to as many as I can. Make them count, make them good, and usually our ATAR crowd's pretty knowledgeable, so we usually get some good ones. We're also going to pop in a few poll questions. Not only is this interactive, it does help us get our credits, so please participate with that and get your CP credits so you can log them in. But without further ado, I will welcome in the panel, and after some brief introductions, each of them will speak. So everybody can get on the mic here, and we'll get through some introductions real quick. It looking like we're looking good, and so just real quick introductions with everybody, and then we'll get into the program. I'm going to start off with Gary Jones, Associate Chief Strategic Technology at the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. Good afternoon, Gary. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Tom. Happy to be here. Happy to discuss this topic. It's near and dear to me and the agency, of course. So I'll just kind of give you a brief introduction who I am. So as you said, I'm Gary Jones.
Hang on, Gary. Maybe Gary will go ahead and do that. Let me get through everybody else real quick. I do have to ask
no worries.
Are you a big motorcycle guy?
I am a huge
motorcycle art up there.
Yes, I love my heart.
Great, and thanks for joining us. Next, we'll go with Stuart Wagner, United States Air Force. How are you doing today, Stuart? And you're not working from the skiff, or maybe you are behind the skiff. I don't know.
No, I'm working from home today. Good afternoon, everyone.
Thanks for joining. Yeah, and where is home, if I may ask?
Arlington, Virginia.
Great. Well, thank you for joining us. And Stuart's full title, which I neglected to mention, is Chief Digital Transformation Officer out of the Chief Information Officer Office, United States Air Force and Space Force. Next, we have with us Dan McCoy, Chief Innovation Officer at the Transportation Security Administration. Good afternoon, Dan.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me, Tom.
Well, you don't look like you're in an airport or a headquarters. Is that your home office?
I am at neither. Yeah, I'm sitting at home in my funky shirt that I threw on last minute because I thought a t-shirt was less appropriate.
I like inappropriate shirts. They're great. I need to wear mine every once in a while. I got to get out of this button down look. I can't help myself, I guess. Next, we have with us Frank Indiviglio. Hopefully I didn't butcher that too bad, Frank.
No, that's perfect.
High performance computing and communications deputy director at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. How are you today, and where are you working out of? It doesn't look like the office, just to take a guess.
No, I'm at home in Silver Spring, Maryland. So appreciate it.
Fantastic. So have you actually been to the office? I know the office is right around the corner from you, right?
Yeah, we a couple of times, but not that often. We're pretty remote right now, so not too often.
Yeah. I think that's the way of the world these days. And last but not least, we have Saeed Masood, who's the Federal Systems Engineer over at Fortinet. How are you doing this afternoon, Masood? Saeed?
Yep, I'm doing well. Thank you. I am excited and happy to see all the participants and looking forward to a fantastic panel discussion today.
So where are you working at? It looks like you're home. And if you move your head, I want to see, is that a baseball bat? What is that?
Those are two baseball bats that I keep with me all the time, just in case you try to come to my house. So I'm ready for you. I'm just kidding. I mentioned to you in the past that I had the opportunity to work with for several vendors in the cybersecurity space. So I did a project for Secret Service, and the management there was very happy, and then my employer was very happy. So they call it Big Hitter Awards. So I got two in the same year. So I just keep it on the wall. Just keep reminding myself that I have to continue to help these panelists who are taking care of the mission on a daily basis, keeping a country safe, right? So it's just a reminder for me I have to keep hitting big.
That's a better explanation. I actually thought you did do it for self-defense when you said it. I totally took the joke. So each of the panels are going to go for a little bit here, 5 minutes or so, and talk about their mission and how they're dealing with transforming their particular agencies' security operations with artificial intelligence. And let's just start off with Gary Jones over at CISA.
Hi, back again. So I guess I could introduce myself. So I'm Gary Jones. I'm the Associate Chief for Strategic Technology, which I am part of the CISA Office of the Chief Technology Officer. So what I'm mainly concerned with is the R&D for CISA, which spans a wide range, as you know, with cybersecurity, from AI to to zero trust to everything that you can possibly think of that goes with cybersecurity. What I'm currently working on now is we're trying to get a paper together to get AI and machine learning focused on zero trust, to see what areas we can get use cases put together for zero trust. The other thing is, this is kind of our proposal season, where we intake a lot of proposals from within the agency to see what R&D we can do, and a lot of them are focused on AI and machine learning. Some challenges that we've been facing, of course, is our data. We're trying to wrangle. We have a lot of data, and trying to get all that data and get it into a place that we can, or places that we can actually use that data and use it effectively to get for analytics and to provide good solutions to senior leadership so that they can make decisions. So what have we faced during the pandemic? I think everyone has the similar story. Everyone had that changeover, going from the workplace to home, getting yourself set up. What we saw from that was that we do have the infrastructure to support it, and we've been supporting it very well during this time. And the switchover was pretty seamless. It was just basically getting folks the hardware and actually standing things up and getting a couple policies in place. But I think that was one of the really great things about the changeover during the pandemic and being able to handle it. Last thing I have to leave you with is, AI and machine learning is of course, one of those things that people kind of, apply to try to apply to everything, but it doesn't need to necessarily apply to everything. There's different levels of it, from automation all the way into to deep learning, to machine learning, to AI. So, the other thing is the data is really important. We have to put the right algorithms with the right data to actually get a solid solution. So it's just like anything else. If you're, we always say AI, you mimic a human. Well, I always say, humans need to be taken care of and curated and everything else like that. They have needs. So does the AI if you're heading towards AI, you have to maintain it, take care of it, train it, retrain it. And I think a lot of people forget about that. That's about it. Thanks, Tom.
No, thank you, Gary, for that. Next, let's go over to the U.S. Air Force and Space Force. Stuart, we'll
Sure.
go ahead with you.
Hey, I'm Stuart Wagner. Before coming into this role, I was a software developer at Microsoft, where I worked extensively with telemetry data, trying to make sense of billion-plus machines for their power, reliability, and performance. Then I went to Azure, basically did the same thing, but instead of optimizing for kind of like what we call platform health, I was optimizing for growth for Azure. And there's basically, three ways you grow a platform. The first is you convert non-paying customers to pay you money. Second way is you get paying customers to pay you more money in some way. And then the third way is you reduce churn. So from there, I went to the Office of the Secretary of Defense, where I was working for the Chief Data Officer on a platform called Advana, running development and engineering there. And most recently, I've moved over about 6 months ago to Air Force and Space Force under the Department of the Air Force, where I'm working as the Chief Digital Transformation Officer. Fundamentally, given my background and given kind of what I've worked on in the past, my area of focus is on telemetry data. And so there's not that much of it in the Air Force where we've yet unified it and put it all together. And so, I'm sorry? Oh, I thought.
No, I think telemetry data is pretty important in the Space Force. Something is telling me. I'm not a rocket scientist or anything. So,
yeah,
fantastic. Thank you for that. Go ahead.
So telemetry is the automatic collection of data basically from a specific system or platform in order to inform on the health of a system. There's basically three benefits to it. The first is you understand the health of the system, which allows you, if you're investing into a platform, to improve it in some way, to understand your return on investment. Ultimately, it's value divided by cost. The second benefit, which I'm focused on, is once you've telemetered your system and you understand health of systems, you can intentionally break those systems. You can attack those systems. You can do things to those systems that allow you to monitor changes in the health of those platforms. And you can do that live in production. Certainly, there are benefits to doing it in synthetic environments and test environments, but fundamentally, there's nothing really better in terms of actuality of how your systems will perform than doing it live. And then the third benefit is the AI and machine learning stuff, which I think is subject to this conference. And so if I have event data, human and machine event data, I can begin to make sense of it, automate it, and inform decision-making on it, which really I think is related to kind of my title and work, which in my definition of digital transformation is fundamentally the recording of human and machine event data, which is telemetry data, in order to inform and improve decision-making and ultimately improve an organization, which is the transformation piece. So that's kind of what I'm focused on and excited about, and happy to answer questions or discuss further.
Thanks, Stuart. Next, we'll go back to DHS, and we'll go ahead with Dan McCoy with TSA.
Hey, thanks,
ahead,
Tom.
Dan.
Stuart, I'd be remiss not to ask at some point if your life's gotten easier or harder with the heat-seeking missile that your outgoing chief software officer launched back via LinkedIn on his departure. So we can talk about that at some other point. But I'm Dan McCoy. I am our Chief Innovation Officer here at TSA. I've been in the role now for a little over 16 months. I think you've heard a lot of some technical responses to AI and security, and my office really is a functional kind of non-technical supportive office. So we are mainly focused right now on standing up what we're calling our innovation pipeline or innovation doctrine. And the backdrop of that will be workforce development. So it's not fair to ask a workforce of 50,000 people to, quote, be innovative and not actually tell them what you expect of them or give them the tools to go do that. So we've introduced design thinking, human-centered design, and Agile and Scrum as baseline requirements or training if you want to get more involved in our innovation practice. We also work for the government. So we have our structural innovation team, which is our non-sexy innovation. This is getting other transaction authority CSOP requirements and some DevSecOps tools in place so that we can actually execute innovation in line with our appropriators requests and our administrator intent. And then the last thing that my office is mainly focused on is ecosystem curation. So calls like this, right? Hearing what CISA is doing in the cyber realm and some of the emerging tech startups they're working with, hearing what Air Force is doing to better arm airmen and do some problem statement discovery in the realm of cyber and AI. We want to pull those in. We want to figure out what's dual use. We want to figure out where we can syndicate some investment together. During the pandemic, right, what we learned pretty quickly, health and safety of the officer and the passenger really did come back front and center. Anytime that we could reduce the contact between our officers and passengers, we took advantage of that. So that was rolling out new credential authentication technology, which does a better job with identity matching to some of our passengers and also reduces the amount of contact that a TSO has either with brandished IDs or passports or anything like that. We also learned pretty quickly, to steal another Air Force line, outgoing Air Force exec Will Roper, the biggest advantage that we can have nowadays is agility. And it's really the only thing that you can bake in that somebody can't replicate. So we noticed very quickly that the health and safety of our officers and the greater transportation system really was a one-for-one correlation with how fast we can move with some new tech and some new hardware into the field. So it's been a reminder for us, especially on the 20th anniversary of 9/11, that we always have to outpace our adversaries. And sometimes that's white nationalists, sometimes that's terrorists, and then sometimes it's a virus. What I'll say about AI, we are on a path right now to really bake AI into our entire mission stack to not only support the officer, but to support the enterprise. And I am incredibly bullish on it from a horizontal technology standpoint. We're doing stream of commerce data collection right now with some of our lab partners so that we can have better algorithm training data sets to open up that process to third-party providers and emerging tech companies. We are taking an agent augmentation first approach. So whether it's agent in the loop making decisions, whether it's agents getting tasked with some bounding so that they're always feeding a continuously updating machine learning algorithm so that we're always on the front line with where our algorithms are. We're trying to work all of that in. And then mostly for the passenger, right? I am incredibly excited about predictive maintenance in this space. We have hundreds of thousands of pieces of operational technology that, just think for a second, if at DCA, 3 CAT machines broke down due to wear and tear on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, that is detrimental to our overall operations and something we know our peers in oil and gas and aerospace are looking at so that they're always having good uptime and good percentage uptime. So we are incredibly excited about where AI can go, and we're really just starting out on our process there.
Great, exciting stuff. I mean, everybody comes in contact with TSA, so the lines shutting down, that's not something anybody wants to see. You got to keep it moving.
Everybody should want to help us, Tom. I mean, that's what our philosophy is. You all go through security.
Yes. Frank, why don't we go ahead with you? Love to hear what the latest and greatest at NOAA. I haven't heard from your group in a while. Interested to see what you guys are working on.
Sure. So again, I'm Frankley Navigli. I'm the Deputy Director for High Performance Computing at NOAA. To kind of give you an idea of what we do in the HPC program, we're split into 2 groups. One is operational. That's the computing infrastructure that delivers the forecast eventually to your phone and you get on the nightly news and off our website. And the other side is the R&D, which is there to improve the products that go into operations, right? So we are very geographically dispersed. We have about 7 centers across the country. 2 of those are operational, 5 of those are R&D. And our focus is to make sure that we're providing, continual improvements from research into operations. So we support that through those 7 centers. And the goal here is to make sure that we have a continuous pipeline of innovation, right? So across those centers, we manage them through the program, again, in 2 separate parts. But on the R&D side, our improvements, or we can focus on AI here, our focus on AI is how do we better our processing, right? So across the agency, you can look at AI as a NOAA-wide goal, from the science side to the technology side. Things like technologies like AI and machine learning can really do things to improve our interaction with the public, improved warnings, better idea of what the impacts of an event will be. They can certainly improve the processing of those and modeling of those events, whether it be, say you're trying to model a storm and you have the model gets smarter with AI to kind of focus computing elements on the interesting parts of that storm. Again, better products, better warnings come out of that. And then all the way at the beginning from observation, right? So getting AI into the observational pipeline removes some of the burden on the folks that have to check that, and gives the model better starting initial conditions to get that product in the most accurate forecast possible with the technology that we have, right? So it is certainly a agency-wide initiative, and we've been over the last years, standing up bodies to help with that. We have an AI executive committee, an AI working group, and we were actually standing up an AI center within NOAA to help move these things forward. Within the program, we try to support this as much as we can, and we found that things like events like hackathons and incubator programs within our program help us engage not only with our scientists, but with the academic community as a whole. We can bring people together, get them the right expertise, kind of drive that innovation. And that spans both the scientific and the technology spheres, right? The scientists are interested in how they're going to get better products, but the technologists are worried about how we're going to make sure this is secure, how we're going to get these models to run faster. On the other side of that, on the technology side for AI, the things that we're trying to address, looking forward to addressing, like everyone else, and I think a number of panelists have said something to this fact, right? We have growing complexity, and that's even been accelerated by the pandemic. If you take the R&D side of my program, that's 5 sites with large assets that are supplying IT services across the spectrum, right? So not just big compute, people run their jobs, but we're doing desktop services and email and everything else. So managing all of that is not, burden's not the right word, but it is certainly it's a very monumental task. And things like data analysis and then growing that up into machine learning and AI are certainly things that are going to help people help the security staff and my operations staff as a force multiplier, as an initial step. We can do more with the technology that we have because we're getting more information from the data that we can collect. And then later, right, it moves further into that automation part, which I think Steve and Dan had talked about, right? We're moving to more automation, so we can do, again, more value add with the staff that we have, instead of making sure that where they're focused on the day-to-day events or getting stressed out by addressing alerts, right? We're moving to a value add and automated process. So for the pandemic, we were lucky in the sense that our program, at least or most of the HPC, is a remote, has acted in a remote operations mode for a long time. As we consolidate resources to centers, most of our users are outside of the center, right? They work in user centers spread across the country. So we were in a good position for that, but we've also had to pivot on getting services and tools out to people to help them do their job, right? In an office, everything's controlled, we understand it. At their house, that's not the same thing, right? We have to get better services moving. A lot of these things, like people are used to interacting with an HP system through a terminal. We're moving that to tools that are web-based so that they can do everything from one page at home, and have a central point of access. But again, it's strengthening and monitoring all these things that have become the focus, and making sure that we have the right analytics, and then trying to work through steps to move machine learning and AI into that pipeline. I think that's the high-level overview.
That's fantastic. I want to get back. We'll go ahead and introduce Syed. I have some questions, but let's get through. Last but not least, you're batting cleanup, to use a baseball analogy, Syed. But I'd love to hear your perspectives. You see things across government. but you also have access, you guys are a large company, you have access to multinational corporations. How is, what do you see across government? What do you see across, financial sector, for instance?
Yeah, thank you, Tom. I appreciate the opportunity. I just want to take like 5 seconds and thank all the panelists who joined today and for all their efforts that they make on a daily basis. And they're fighting the fight and they're succeeding, and we appreciate that all that you do. From a perspective, I'm Syed Masood. I'm part of the Fortinet Federal team out here in Reston, Virginia. We would love to have you all come out when it is the right time to meet in person. Been doing this for a while with different vendors, Blue Code, Cisco, some others, Tipping Point, Trend Micro, and now at Fortinet. And the focus has been cybersecurity. It's not a one-day thing. It's not, hey, I put a policy in today and I'm done. So it's an evolving thing, and Gary and others mentioned a lot of the challenges with data and telemetry. So we're hearing from our government customers. We're also hearing from our large enterprise VLE. We call them very large enterprise customers, right? So the message is similar, not identical, but similar. Hey, we have shortage of really solid cybersecurity professionals. We're unable to tackle this challenge. We have people in place, we have teams in place, but we don't have enough. We have tools in place, we have multiple layers of protection to protect our data, our assets, our people. However, we are unable to correlate everything and come to a point where it's intelligent piece of information to take action. So we're hearing similar types of thoughts, and I just wanted to mention that how was it different for us as vendors during the time of pandemic. It was a very important and critical time for us. We were listening to our customers, right? We were constantly listening. We gave us an opportunity to get on Zooms and Teams and other channels, other ways of communicate. But we were doing it virtually, but the message was same. Hey, Gary, it's good that you guys were ready. Digital transformation took place very, very quickly, but that brought challenges also. So we heard a lot about that as well. And they all talked about how do we, keep the breaches at a minimum? How do we mitigate all these new emerging threats, the 0 days? And then all of a sudden, over the last several months to a year and a half, 2 years, zero trust became a big phrase in many organizations. So, what we're hearing again, Tom, from most customers, be it public sector or federal or enterprise customers, we need help so that we can mitigate threats before they have a chance to spread across the organization.
No, thank you for that. And I think my first question is, I'm just trying to put myself in the eyes of a cybersecurity analyst, and you're just getting inundated with information. How do you separate? And there's all these new threats. How do you separate the wheat from the chaff? Gary, one thing you brought up that I thought was pretty interesting, that you guys are actually setting up a lab to test solutions out. What approaches are good? I want to hear a little bit about that lab that you're setting up, and then we'll go around the horn here and find out what everybody else is doing.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. So yeah, we're putting an initiative to, actually not just initiative, it's actually being built. It's a cyber lab. It's going to be a joint collaboration environment where vendors can come in, test solutions. Analysts can test certain hardware, software, whatever you want to, towards machine learning. So it's all going to be geared towards machine learning and AI. We're really trying to grow it over the years. It's probably going to come into effect somewhere around 2024. The minimum viable product is probably going to be somewhere around there, and that's going to be just the initial bare bones algorithms that you can put in place vendors can come in and do some checking in there. And then what we want to do is bring in our state and local partners to kind of work in there as well. So it's going to be one of those places that can really kind of help out not only the analysts, but decision makers and procurement, what to buy, what's relevant, how will we help get that information as far as incidents set up, or learning more of how certain attacks are happening, and anything along that realm. So I think this is one of the big projects that we're really doing at CISA. And I would to not include S&T in that. So they're a big part of they're a big part of the Cyber Lab setup.
Now, we have our own lab ourselves. As many of you know, we launched the Zero Trust Lab. It's based on about 11 use cases that the government came up with it for us, and the vendors are doing it. Of course, you guys are at Ford and I are going to be part of that. Stuart, I kind of like what you said too. You actually, it's good to test, and I think that you didn't say you weren't doing that, but then to actually go on that production environment, I think that's, you got to go make that move at some point, right? How do you balance out? How do you do that strategy?
Sure. So the way I'm thinking about it, and I'm working closely with a number of our members of our test team. There's an entire test division within the Air Force that's focused on testing airplanes. And what they do is they basically specialize in instrumentation of our weapon systems. They collect data off of those systems and then determine whether or not, what are their capabilities, to what extent are they functional, when are they ready to field, et cetera. And then what we do after that is we rip all that instrumentation off and we go and send the planes off to people. And I find that to be problematic. And so increasingly what we're trying to do is walk across the bridge, and the way I'm thinking about it is by engaging the test community and increasingly building up the instrumentation on our different systems, be it business operations, weapon systems, et cetera, our networks. Increasingly, the thought is that instead of instrumenting these systems for a tested or known environment, instead we should just leave the sensors on, and we should be using those sensors to produce kind of these kind of advanced achievements, the things we want to go. If I can get into more specifics about JADC2 and ABMS, which are within the DoD and Air Force, kind of the joint warfighter concept or the approach that we intend to use. And much of it ends up being undergirded with the ability to collect real-time telemetry data in order to obtain visibility and the ability to effectively command and control. Because fundamentally what we're trying to do is basically pick a best weapon to shoot at somebody, pick a best set of sensors to determine somebody or set a system. And so the ability to do that, basically hinges on our ability to get real-time data off these systems that are being leveraged at that moment. And so I'm engaging the test community. I'm putting on a hackathon, building an environment very similar to what Gary mentioned, actually, the ability to bring in vendors and our own government employees and fuse data together in one location. And so those are some of the efforts I'm focused on. Does that answer your question?
No, I think it did. Thank you. That was great. Dan, you're in one of the more challenging environments. You've got 60-some thousand folks, and there's union issues. They're in an environment that they're open. Yep. And how do you guys test new things? I assume you got to pilot it quite a bit over
there. You would be 100% correct, right? An old line I always use, it's really hard to innovate in highly regulated industries, and our own is included in that. So we have, really strong partnerships with some lab entities. So Sandia National Labs is an incredible partner of ours when it comes to AI specifically. They're doing a lot of stream of commerce, data collection. S&T, so the Science and Technology Directorate within DHS, which I'm sure Gary also works with, has been an amazing partner when we look at small business innovation research grants, when we look at OTAs and getting some pilot programs up and running, and especially doing some third-party scouting for AI companies. I know I don't think I can name specific company names without getting a call from our chief counsel in about 20 or 30 minutes, but we've really done an amazing job over the past year targeting companies either through InQtel or the Cyber process to get them in live airport environments to do some data collection and then create some synthetic data to kind of work our AI angle. The TSIF is outside of DCA. They're mainly focused on prohibited items. So please don't bring that really large bottle of hand sanitizer through. That's going to be a problem for us. And then the TSL, Transportation Security Lab, forget geographically where that is, honestly, right now, but is mainly focused on explosives and other detections. So we have a little bit of overlap with CBP in that we are starting to look for things like fentanyl and powders, which are presenting a really dangerous use case for both of our workforces. But yeah, they go through rigorous amounts of testing in lab and then live environments as well before they're brought into the field.
Thank you for that, Dan. And Frank, it may have been your predecessor, it was a while ago, where they were talking about how the data scientists, and I know this is kind of industry standard, that they were spending so much time setting up their environment. I know you guys were really working on that and to do some testing, try to help the folks test and dev a little better. And what kind of progress have you all made?
I think we're making progress. I'm sure I can't say we're at the finish line, but we are certainly making progress. I mean, getting the data to whoever needs it is a challenge, I think, for most of us. And we have these kind of centralized resources for data, but how do you make them more accessible, right? So we have programs within NOAA that the big data program, which will put them out on the cloud resource and they become accessible, not just for NOAA scientists or technicians, but for the public, or whether they be academia, citizen scientists, or industry partners, right? So we are, that's part of the modernization task that we're still working through, getting things like data lakes stood up and places where people can come together around that data, right? We have I think a good, strong scientific process for that, but I guess the technology part's going to be one of the things that we're pushing for, and that's been extended. Frankly, we have a part of our, the way we're approaching modeling now is to have the community included. So that adds another level to that, right? We have to get data out to the community, make sure that we're engaging with them, but then we have to engage to them through software, right? How do you refine that process where some of the development's coming from outside your organization? What does that look like? What does that look like to your internal development process? Where what are the tools that we need to make sure that we're scanning things, that we make sure that we understand and trust the code that we're taking in, and then having an environment in which all of these things are coming together, right? So we're really strong on the modeling side. The data science side, we're also very strong on, but not pushing them together is not the right word, but getting them closer and getting the software environment to be nimble enough to deal with both of those kinds of workloads are the things that we're working on just generally in the program. And I think across NOAA, kind of containerizing workflows, making sure that we're using more modern tools, and even going as far as rewriting things in newer kind of software paradigms so that we're keeping up with not only the technology with the times, right? So the number of initiatives that we're doing along those lines, but that's the basic premise, is to make sure that we can get the data to the folks that need it and get a discovery started without the technology being in the way, right? So the goal, the end goal for me is I don't have a scientist or an engineer has to move data, more than once or at all to get their job done, and that's becoming. Hopefully, we're getting to where that's commonplace, but we're reducing those where we can.
Great. Syed, so I'm a major CFO Act agency. I've got a big SOC. I'm trying to add this new capability. How would I go about a roadmap of doing it? You can't do it overnight. How do you see that done successfully?
Yeah, great questions. Listening to all the panelists, right? We heard And this we hear from many CIOs and influencers and decision makers. Like, you guys mentioned machine data, human data, data lake, high performance computing, right? So you're talking about a lot of data that needs to be scrutinized, needs to be looked at, and then you need to do something about it. So it is not something that's overnight for sure. Nobody can claim that we have a silver bullet. However, there are technology solutions based on machine learning, based on AI, that are available to you all, where, if you look at your overall challenge and say, okay, I need to get to implement a solution that can get me the protection that I need, with keeping in mind cheaper, faster, and result oriented, right? So security should not be or AI or any type of models that you're employing should not become a hindrance, should not slow you down, right? So you have to make sure that you assess what you're trying to protect, you assess what your overall goal is, and then based on that. So that's how come we have solution like XDR now, the cross-platform detection and response. So what is that? Basically, you're taking in feeds from multiple sources that are giving you all the data, and then you have these solutions in place, and when you tweak it and you configure it right, you can look at all the data and then rely on your machine learning models, your AI models, your artificial neural networks or deep neural network models, and then say, okay, all of this is giving me an indication that this is something malicious or definitely bad, or maybe it's not malicious, just something that we need to whitelist. So, we're sitting down with our organizations, and we're trying to understand what they're trying to accomplish, and then we're trying to help them put all of this, these levels of protection or solutions that can help them get there, like in the Sandia labs, for example, if you guys have something there. Other places, other models that you guys employ, where we have solutions, the industry have solutions. Definitely set it up, check it out, and then you have to see how that data, when it gets fed in, what's the output. I mean, it has to be intelligent and it has to be quick. Otherwise, the breaches can really take off, and you can go across the pond into Europe within sub-seconds. So, having some solutions based on AI that can give you determination within under a second or sub-second or within 100 milliseconds, those are the types of solutions that organizations should definitely consider.
Great. Well, I don't want to get in trouble with my team. That's the last thing I want with Mel and Alyssa. I want to make sure we ask these poll questions. So we'll go ahead and go through that. Can we pull up a poll question? Okay. Cybersecurity complexity can be broken down into what key challenges? Single choice. I don't want to give it away, but I have a feeling I know what's going to win. So if everybody can get back to that fairly quickly here. I know some agencies have gone, they had so many tools, they weren't implementing them all. SBA comes to mind. So anyway, I shouldn't skew the results. All right, let's see, everybody get a chance to do it. Let's go see what the results look like. Okay, I thought it would be 100% for all the above. So you put that back up, Alyssa. I closed it. Did I close it for everybody? Okay, there we go. Yeah, I think that the all the above there, we probably didn't do the greatest job on that poll question. Let's go to the next one. All right, see what we got here. Next poll question. Okay, most organizations can benefit from AI solutions because of the ability to classify malware based on what it has seen before, even if the malware is trying to disguise itself. Oh, it's a hard one. True or false? All right. maybe we'll talk about that one when we see the results. Does anybody want to comment on that? Stuart, anything to add? They're kind of like a developer.
I'm not an expert on malware, but what I would say is, like, with any type of AI system, you're fundamentally attempting to produce one that can generalize. And so that question kind of gets at, can it generalize effectively against new forms of malware? And I'm not actually sure if it can or not.
Right, right. Syed, do you want to add anything?
Oh yeah, I mean, Stuart, spot on. Absolutely can, right? So that's the idea. The new and emerging threats right now are trying to evade the defenses that are in place today, right? So you have people who are protecting emails, right, with attachments, with password protected attachments, or communications taking place encrypted. You have people clicking on links that are downloading files without their knowledge. So if you have an AI solution in place in your environment, and it has to be deployed in a place on the network where it can see most, if not all, traffic traversing your network, right? So the positioning of the AI system is critical. So if you can determine that, and then you're now able to see this traffic, traversing your network, it's going to say, okay, yeah, this piece of communication or this file is trying to evade my sandbox. This is definitely showing signs of maliciousness. So the AI model will flag that as a potentially malicious file.
Right. Anybody else have anything else, or we'll just move on?
Yeah, Tom, this is Gary. So
Gary.
I would just say that, when you're looking at malware, if you're looking at historical malware, you may get some skewed results, for when you're trying to pick up something new. You have the adversaries are also using AI models as well, and so you got the kind of adversarial machine learning that's going on now. So the recency of information is critical. So I would say that historical malware data would not necessarily be relevant to what we have today, and the use of, with the adversary using AI models, they're not necessarily going through the same things that they were previously. They're not showing their hand as they would before. So those new so that recency of information is very critical and for the malware analysis.
Great. Let's go one more poll question. This one's kind of interesting. This will set up the rest of the discussion, I think. How satisfied are you with your agency's ability to use AI innovations to accelerate security analytics, identify and classify attack vectors, and enable advanced enterprise threat protection? And if you are in industry, just maybe the agency that you're presumably working with, you can answer on their behalf. All right, let's get that in. Everybody, we've got enough time for everybody to answer that one. Let's see what kind of results we have. Wow. All over the board, literally, equally. All right. Highly satisfied, 10%. I had a feeling that was going to be low. It just seems it's more agency by agency. Everybody's a little different. Any surprises there? Anything? Seemed about even across the board. Neutral was the biggest one. Good and bad were about evenly distributed. Great. Let's see what we want to talk about next. How about the workforce? What do we need to do? I think that's one of the big things. It comes up every technical discussion. How are we engaging with the workforce and upskilling and reskilling within your respective agencies? I think that would be a pretty good one there. Maybe we'll start off with you, Dan.
Yeah, so that actually is something I've talked about this previously, right? Especially when it comes to cybersecurity and AI. There's there just aren't enough people in the Capital Beltway to fill every job. I mean, here at TSA, right, we have to compete with everybody else in the line for that, not only those vendor resources, but those feds that we can bring in. And let's all be honest, right? The traditional federal salary model of coming in at a GS 11 with that special skill set capability just doesn't align with the market. So when I was at Deloitte, we couldn't even keep good cybersecurity experts at a consultant salary because they would go over to Salesforce, Microsoft, and they would immediately get a signing bonus worth half of their salary as a consultant. So we have critically needed to upskill the workforce. We've had conversations ranging from LinkedIn Learning to pilot programs with Pluralsight and Future of Work companies to understand how we can develop pathways. So something that I know Google's doing that we're kind of taking to heart at TSA is alternative forms of certification and verification. How can you turn somebody who doesn't necessarily have a 4-year college degree in computer science into somebody that you can reliably say you are an AI cybersecurity expert, you are just as well educated on IoT endpoint security, and we are comfortable with the certification we've given you based on the training. So it's something that we're looking towards. We're using a lot of technology modernization support from the Hill to help fund those programs and then build out, again, that pathway so that if somebody does want to go from an officer into a more technical role to advance their career, it's something that we're trying to help build.
I agree with everything you said. I think that we have to change these requisitions for the OPM. Oh, you need to be 4-year computer science major. And I think one thing about the DMV that's a little different is we have, with Amazon coming in, they are having a lot of new recs and they're only going to get worse. So that it's tough for the Microsofts and the Googles to recruit people now because of Amazon, just the number of jobs and and incoming salaries are so high. So for cybersecurity and ML and AI, et cetera, et cetera. Gary, what are you all doing at CSIS besides this great mission that you have? How are you going to, in NBA, we call it like building a shooter. Everybody's got a shoot now. How do you build some cybersecurity experts?
Well, so I know CISA is doing a lot in that space. So we're offering a lot of incentives to recruiting incentives, retention incentives to keep our folks and really start to expand on that. We are also starting a new thing called the Cyber Talent Management System, where you don't come in at the salary of a GS worker, right? You come in at a much higher salary. So, but those jobs are few and far between, as they will grow probably over time, but they come in significantly higher than, like I said, like a GS worker, sometimes higher than the SES folks. So, once we have that system in place, we're able to recruit more from the private sector and be a little bit more competitive. Also, we're able to retain those folks. It's not an easy thing to come into because there's going to be a test, there's going to be several interviews. So it'll probably follow the same thing like, say, what an Amazon or a Microsoft or anything goes through, where you have to go through probably several interviews and to get the position. But it's definitely the incentives, the recruitment and retention incentives, and the cyber talent management system that we're using to help to gather and retain folks.
Stuart, how about in the Air Force and the Space Force? I mean, you guys got some of the coolest missions out there. I think that you have some natural advantages there, but how do you keep and retain cyber professionals?
Sure. So there's a number of cyber branches within both the officer corps and the enlisted corps where they're trained in cyber defense, and depending on their specific occupation, cyber offense as well in some cases. we've got also digital university, which my boss, Ms. Knossenberger, has been leading the charge on, enabling basically the access to Coursera-like materials for any airman or guardian to go on and watch. And then, of course, we have our educational programs where we enable both enlisted and officers to take on either undergraduate or graduate studies and allow them to kind of focus in on their area. We are also within the Department of Defense. I know there's, I've read a little bit about it. I don't know that I've seen it fully implemented yet, but there's also incentive pay for each language that you know. So we're viewing computer languages like other foreign languages and incentive pay via that. So there's a number of ways in which I think the Air Force and the Department of Defense is trying to basically promote these educational growth opportunities for people. The key thing in my perspective, though, where I start to ask questions, and this is one of the reasons I took the role, coming from a technical background, is looking at the senior leadership and the ability basically for the most technical people to reach the highest levels of seniority. And I think across government today, the focus in the SEX core of being kind of like generally skilled or generally broad or being more knowledgeable at just making decisions, I don't know that that works in the technical space. And I think providing kind of access points for senior technical leaders to reach the highest levels of government is going to be important for us in order to draw in those talent from people like Microsoft, Amazon, et cetera. Tom, you noted the competition coming from Amazon. My wife used to work for Amazon and recently left, and I was at Microsoft. I actually think that the number of basically software developers coming to the Beltway, excited to do some work for these tech companies, provides opportunities for government to recruit or learn from. There are people who want to make an impact, you know, who I know, and who would be willing to take some amount of pay cut in order to make an impact in government. And so I actually think this is exciting times with HQ2 and others where we can draw these people in, but we need to provide that pathway where they say, like, I can see myself being a senior leader in this organization in 5 to 10 years if I make an impact and I'm technical. Over.
Yeah, and look, Dan and Stuart, you're both recently left major companies to serve your government, to serve the American people. So I think you have some natural advantages there. And I think the Nick Shalon, which everybody should see, his outgoing thing is he basically said that you need to have technical people running this, you know, technical things. You can't have somebody that is dropped in for a new duty station that doesn't understand the technology. It's too much for a big ramp up. So I think I agree with him on that. We love Nick and we'll miss Nick. I'm sure we'll see him around again. Frank, you know, how is the recruiting at NOAA and you guys have a big mission. I mean, we all love you on those nice days. So
yeah. Yeah. So before I get into it, what Stuart and Dan just said is, I think, are right. Mission actually is the best selling point for all of us, right? This is a place where, you know, and regardless of what agency you're in, you can work on kind of cutting edge things, and you're supporting the public interest, right? It's not selling more ads or other economic endeavors that folks work on in the AI space, but you're actually making someone's life better, whether through weather or the defense or everything else that the government does. So I think that's the biggest selling point for all of us collectively, and certainly building those pathways for the technical folks to rise in the organization gives them an incentive to come and stay. But I think from our perspective, we've built out programs where there is what we call a Lanterns program, which allows people to move around within the agency to try different rotations out for a short amount of time, and you know, have a stable path to do that and go back or stay, whatever they would like to do. But it at the end of the day, it's an opportunity to grow, right? And I think, you know, you can do it through internships, these Lantern programs, but I think the cross training is going to be important. And this is kind of a model that I pull from my HPC background, but I think it's true for all of us, right? Finding a cybersecurity person who knows data, who knows AI, that's like a handful of people that we could probably name collectively. But getting those people together, getting the data scientists together, the cybersecurity people, or getting the machine learning people together with those, and giving them opportunity to work together, right? So things like hackathons, things like incubators, it's kind of a low risk, high reward. You may not get anything, but the things that you do get, it may be very worthwhile. And in the worst case, these people are getting together and talking, and that's actually what you really, really need. So not only are they, you may not be able to train someone to be the best programmer, cybersecurity analyst, data engineer, but as long as they're picking up those cross skills, you're building a better workforce, right? And as long as you have those programs to kind of build up behind it, now you're building wide and tall in skills, and that's what you really need to do.
Frank, that's a great point. All the white papers we produce, now we have this lab, that's fantastic. I think the fact that now maybe Stuart now knows Dan and they have some of the same problems and they pick up the telephone or they text or whatever they do, that's the kind of networks we need to have. So maybe I don't have the answer, but I know this other agency might be a little ahead of me in this one particular thing. Bam, I'll reach out to them. That's a great point. Syed, I think you get the last word. I just looked at the clock. We're done. I mean, we're already at the end. What fastest hour on the internet? If you'll please close this up, and thank you again for helping us with it. But close us up on this topic because I think it's important.
Absolutely. So we heard a lot of great information on today's panel, right? But one thing we have to keep in mind that everything is shifting. Your threats are shifting. They're emerging. There are different types of threats all the time. Dan pointed out, like, hey, when you go to the airport or any place where you need to go through security, we need to learn how we go through the security, right? So we have to learn that system. Exactly like that, if you keep that in mind, if you have a security architecture in mind, now if you have multiple vendors deployed, you always find it hard to integrate. And that will create a bigger challenge for your security operations centers teams, right? So now they have to, as Frank pointed out, I cannot find somebody who knows AI, but also knows everything about cybersecurity, penetration testing, and this, that, and the other. So keep in mind, if you look at solutions that are self-educating or self-evolving. Rely on AI, rely on ML, machine learning. However, make sure that your security architecture, your security fabric is tied together so that your administrators, your security engineers, when they log into this graphical user interface, they're able to jump from, hey, I'll go here for all my alerts. I'll try to understand what that means. But if I have to jump to another system, it's not a very strange system to me. So having the security fabric in mind and having solutions like artificial intelligence backed solutions that can detect in sub-second your threats, or at least flag if something is malicious or potentially malicious, right? Have all of that together so that your workforce that's still learning and it continues to educate itself, they will be able to do something about that threat, right? Because we just can't find enough really solid, workforce that can address this. The gap is there. And lastly, I just wanted to mention, I know Tom, you told me this is not a Fortinet, commercial by any means. However, Fortinet is definitely addressing this. We have solutions called virtual security analysts, which is backed by machine learning and AI that will help you. Things that you can do within minutes and seconds, that you can do in minutes and hours, virtual security analysts can do in seconds.
Awesome.
And obviously, we're hiring veterans and we're training them and employing them and offering free training to the industry. I mean, anybody who wants to join this industry, right? So there's free training available by Fortinet. Just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, and I think anything that can help with the workforce issues, we're not going to run out. We're never going to fill all these billets, right? So we need a combination of better tools, using AI, and better trained people, and upskilling. I think it's an all of the above strategy. So it's been a great talk. Thank you, Dan, Gary, Frank, Syed, and Stuart. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have today. Thank you for joining us. And we actually have an event tomorrow, modernizing authentication across the federal government with FIDO. And that'll be tomorrow at 1:30. Thank you very much, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.